Hello and welcome to the Billowing Hilltop Podcast, a bonus episode of the Billowing Hilltop Podcast. We decided that we would record a chat about the story of the Age of Worms in the campaign so far. So this has got spoilers in it. Do not listen to this if you have not yet listened to episode 163. If you have listened to episode 163, you're safe. We kick about all sorts of stuff about Kyuss and Wind Dukes and Ebon Triad and all of that stuff. You may find it interesting, you may not. If you've been keeping up with the story, a lot of it will be second nature. If you're anything like our players, maybe a lot of this will be useful. I don't know, we'll see. Anyway, it's something to listen to. I have some newsy things and bits to do. First of all, a reminder that we will be at Dragon Meet on Saturday the 2nd of December 2023. It's being held at the Novotel in Hammersmith. It's a full day of gaming with tables and trade halls and all of that. And we will be there. If you find us on social media or message us or email us at hello@billowinghilltop.com, maybe we could arrange to meet up, say hi, I don't know, whatever. And the other thing is that if you're listening to this on the day of release, it is Monday the 27th of November, and it is Dan's 30th birthday. Not that Dan, reader Dan. This is a special birthday episode just for you. Well, birthday and Christmas together. So happy birthday from all of the elders of the Hilltop. That's about it. Ratings and reviews, as always, are welcome should you be so generous as to leave one. You can contact us on social media through all of the things I go on and on about, but it's basically at Billowing Hilltop on everything apart from Twix, which is at Billowing Hilltop. That is it. Let us push on with Dan's special birthday and Christmas together episode of the Billowing Hilltop Podcast. What's going on? Okay.
Right, in 1 minute,
We're off.
1 minute, my cooker's going to release its pressure. So there'll be beeping and hissing of steam in about a minute, just under.
Hello, readers. We're sitting having a chat about stuff. Yes, it's not you.
Yeah.
Or one of your valves going.
Well, no, I don't have valves.
It's not the shut-off valve.
I'm not steampunk, for Christ's sake.
We're here to create some content. Let's create some content.
Hey guys, let's create content, man. It's all about the content.
Hey, let's create content.
Content is king, they say.
We're going to have a chat, because we've had a couple of times recently. The further we get into this thing, the more and more little threads and elements get added to the story.
Mostly
is my
4,
take
3,
on things.
2,
oh, there we go.
1,
yeah, it's
0, beep, 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 beep.
More and more threads get added.
And
or more and more bits get added to the story as we go. And more than once recently, I know you're hopeless at remembering, we're all hopeless at remembering the plot of adventures that we do. It's just a thing. We're just hopeless at it. But recently I've noticed that there are so many things going on that sometimes it just feels like it's kind of like gunk kind of oiling up, blocking up the wheels of things as they turn. So I'm not here to dispel any mysteries or to give you any answers, but what I thought we might do, and the readers may or may not, readers, if you're listening to this is recorded after we have done episode 167.
Wow.
So if you haven't listened to episode 167, well, I tell you what, actually, what episode was Lashana? Why don't we say that we don't talk about anything after that?
It's after the feast.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Except that I can't remember what episode that was.
Yeah.
Don't worry, you won't need to remember. I'm looking at it now. So, readers, if you're listening to this, we are recording this after episode 163, the first episode of Book 9. So you should have heard the discussion with Lashana after Zeech's banquet. If you haven't listened all that far, then some of the stuff we talk about might be mild spoilers, but not really scary spoilers. No secrets are going to be revealed, nothing like that. We're just going to, all I really thought we could do is talk about all the different bits and make sure that the stuff that's maybe just been chucked in your general direction to add, I don't know, complexity is not messing with your idea about what the general story is. So I've got a question for you. And the first question is, what is the Age of Worms?
What's the Age of Worms? The Age of Worms is a culmination of a set of, in my understanding, is a culmination of a set of, well, effectively prophecies that we're kind of seeing being played out, whereupon the baddie, or the evil, I can't remember the names of things, but behind there is an evil power sitting above and behind, I believe, Kyuss, who's trying to bring about this thing called the Age of Worms, which is like, I suppose you could say, it's like the Book of Revelations. It's like, at the end of the world, it's the four horsemen. That's my thinking on it. It's undead will kind of rule the world.
That is pretty good, apart from one fundamental misunderstanding.
Which is
that well, I say misunderstanding. There's been no evidence, nobody has spoken to you in all of our painfully long role-playing episodes with, Eligos and Markush and Hesti and whatever, about there being any kind of great power behind Kyuss.
No, you're absolutely right. Nobody has, but that's my suspicion.
But Kyuss is the deity. Kyuss is the undead deity, right?
Certainly Kyuss is the undead deity.
Yes.
Yes, we'll get into Kyuss in a bit, but yes, he's the harbinger of the Age of Worms, he's described as. He is the evil lord of the undead who would rule over the world of the living.
Yeah.
Yes. That doesn't mean there isn't something going on in the background.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to dispel that thought, Paul.
Yeah.
At all. But certainly nothing in what you've heard has indicated that there's anybody pulling the strings. But it is a Paizo adventure path, and every Paizo adventure path has layers of bad people sitting behind other bad people.
I think we're pretty certain that Kyuss is pulling the strings behind the Ebon Triad.
That is correct.
And
yes.
They were pulling the strings of the dragon whose name I can't remember.
Ilthane.
Yes.
Yes,
so there's kind of
right.
There's like a hierarchy going on.
There is. This is all really good. Yes.
But is Kyuss pulling the strings of the Ebon Triad? I just thought that the Ebon Triad were a bunch of religious nuts who believe in Kyuss and believe that he will return.
Again, I won't tell you anything that you haven't been told already by an NPC.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just make sure we close that off. So the Age of Worms is a prophesized age of evil where undead rule the world of the living under the
auspice.
Yeah, under the lordship of Kyuss, the Lord of Undead. That's nice and simple, and it's been predicted, it's feared, it is over the horizon and approaching fast according to all of the indicators that you are finding out in the world.
My take on it is that you've got lots of different factions that are sort of involved, have got different interests with bringing about or not the Age of Worms. So although there are layers of things, everybody's got different interest in it, and we're somehow weaving our way through everybody's interests and being dragged into this sort of unwitting heroes. And I think we're sort of almost going to be instrumental about bringing the Age of Worms about, even though we're trying to stop it.
Yeah, we might be part of the prophecy.
Yeah, so you don't know who to trust. You don't know what people's real objectives are. You don't know who's your friend. You don't know who's your real enemy. We don't know whether we trust Hesti or Marcus
or Lashon
and or anybody really. So it's quite an interesting situation, I think.
This is all excellent. Who can you trust? And who stands to gain and who stands to lose should the Age of Worms come about?
I also think it's not just about good versus evil, it's also about law versus chaos, because there are some elements of law that seem to be involved, and chaos is obviously a chaotic thing.
Well, I mean, the name is, maybe not a coincidence. I love the fact that Lucas keeps calling him Kyuss, like a kiosk, ticket kiosk.
How should I be pronouncing it?
Kyuss.
There's no rule. Kyuss, I pronounce it.
Kyuss.
It's Kyuss.
Yeah, Kyuss.
I was in chaos.
Well, it sounds a bit like chaos. I've always thought so.
Hadn't made that connection.
This is something that Eligos said to you. The tales of the Age of Worms itself are as old as anything, often known by other names, the End Times, the Dark Age, and the Eternal Ruin, among others. The Age of Worms is an ancient set of prophecies that speak of a transformation of the world, of a time when life gives way to something else. These prophecies are recorded in certain rare texts, like the Book of Vile Darkness, and the Libris Mortis, the Necronomicon, and the Apostolic Scrolls, and are inscribed on the walls of ancient ruins across the world. Many cults and soothsayers have developed their own theories about the Age of Worms, but I have never seen so many references to it from so many different sources as the information you have provided me. That is what Eligos told you when you first brought her all of the materials that you had seized from your various adventures leading up to that. And I thought that was a nice little bit, like single paragraph of like, right, this is what we're dealing with. And yes, you're all correct. Kyuss is the undead deity associated with bringing about the Age of Worms. Good.
Move on.
Let's talk
next
quickly about prophecies. We're not going to go through loads of prophecies. You have been told by various people that there are a series of prophecies that when they come true, the Age of Worms is upon the world. Most of them we're not going to get into because they've come true. You've seen visions of them coming true.
Yeah.
Might come back to one of them briefly at the end because we need to tie something up. The two prophecies that, to your knowledge, have not yet been fulfilled are a tripartite spirit once again becomes one, and at its advice are the mighty undone. That's the first one. The other prophecy is on the eve of the Age of Worms, a hero of dread shall gift a city to the dead. Now, you've got a guess about both of those. You've made guesses about both of those. Let's talk about them. What do you think they may or may not be?
So I have a question before I give you an answer to that one. One thing that I've not really sort of got through this whole process is, although you say there are prophecies and people are talking about the return of Kyuss, etc.
Yes.
We don't seem to have actually found yet a definitive, like, this is the mechanism for actually bringing about the Age of Worms, or the Age of Worms is going to happen and it's just a question of when. What we seem to have seen throughout the whole process is we've seen various people trying to do things that they think might be part of the process of bringing about the Age of Worms. So, for instance, when we had the games, obviously that huge worm was all about sort of infesting a whole city of people with worms, and that would fulfill that prophecy of gifting a city. And then we went on the research expedition with the sort of green smoke when we were infected with the worms themselves. And what are they called? The Red Hand? I've forgotten their name now. That group of people that we infiltrated and basically...
Oh, the Red Blades.
The Red Blades, sorry. And they were doing the research on all the green clouds.
I'm with you.
They seem to be also trying to do some kind of mechanism, but what I've not actually seen up to now has been some kind of like, okay, well, if you turn the world into zombies, then at that point, Kyuss appears, or is it such that at some stage or other, some event will happen, and then Kyuss will reappear, and then everybody will be zombies, sort of thing, which is sort of the thing we saw when we were in the ziggurat, because we saw
yes, the ziggurat thing. Yes, the ziggurat is significant. Not going to tell you any more than that. The ziggurat is significant. Now,
the shard. I mean, there was a picture of a dragon taking a shard away that looked a bit like Superman.
It was a vision that you saw. Yeah, we're going to pick up on that in a little bit because we're going to concentrate on a bit more on Kyuss in a moment.
Could you say that was a phylactery?
Well, let's don't get confused.
Okay.
So, Lucas, you're a solution-oriented person. I suspect what you're fishing for there is, what do we unplug to stop the Age of Worms happening? Right? What is the actual practical mechanism whereby the Age of Worms is triggered, so that we actually have something that we know we have to stop or do to interfere with it happening? At the moment, we're not being told.
It's a phylactery.
Oh, I mean, I take your point on that, but I wasn't actually that far yet. I mean, that's actually a good point. That would have been something I would have thought about afterwards. But where I was trying to get at even before that is just the fact that there seem to be all these factions. And at the moment, all of those things, they almost feel like sort of cultist groups who are sort of like saying, oh, well, my interpretation of the Necromicon is that I have to do this and this and this, and then I can bring about the Age of Worms. But nobody actually really seems to know.
Let's talk about a couple of these things. First of all, let's talk about
these. Confused, but you know what I'm getting at, right?
There's a lot to unpack there, Lucas. I thought I'd say something annoying. When you say that you feel that there are all these factions and cults and people all trying to do all of this stuff, who are you talking about?
So the first thing was obviously the whole thing going on with the games, Rachnian and Ocaral, right?
Yeah.
They were in cahoots with the demon who had the green beam and the trap worm.
Yes.
The plot there was obviously to take over the city through using the games as a vehicle. You know, that worm would have
you've drawn a line up. You've drawn a line under them. Rachnian is dead. Ocaral is dead. What you do know about Rachnian was that he was a cultist of Kyuss. He wasn't part of some other secret organization, right? So I'm actually writing stuff down here. So the first group we're talking about are people who are the cultists of Kyuss. Kyuss has worshippers out in the world, and they would like to bring about the age of his rule. Well, Rachnian is one of them. As is, to your understanding, that character called Mother Maggot, the person who turned out to be the secret head of the Red Blades. You visited what looked like some kind of microplane where she was hanging out, where she imprisoned Uncle Buggy under the guardianship of Buggy's cousin, Lugpod.
Yeah.
They were up to something to do with green gas and all sorts of stuff. Let's not get into that. That just confuses the issue. But they're also cultists of Kyuss.
Right.
Now, who is there who's not a cultist of Kyuss that you feel as...
So then the question is, they are cultists of Kyuss, but the other cultists of Kyuss were the Ebon Triad.
No, the Ebon... Okay, so this is something that
also
I
believe in Kyuss.
We're going to
No, that's not right.
You're right, Johnny.
Okay.
They're their own groups.
Yeah, I thought they each believed in a minor deity who they all believed was under Kyuss.
No, I don't think they...
They're a breakaway religion.
They're a breakaway religion.
Right.
Breakaway religion, yeah.
They were a front operation. What you have learned...
That's right.
So much stuff has been thrown at you, and this is what I worry about, is that the stuff is thrown at you, and because it doesn't land, because we're concentrating on other things, and there is just so much information, you can't pick out what's significant and what's not significant. I can get into this very easily without telling you anything you don't already know, or you wouldn't learn if you listened back to the recordings of what we've done. You have just learned that the Ebon Triad, it's done, it's over. It never was really a thing. Yeah. It's not cultists of Kyuss. It's separatists from the three major, for want of a better word, evil religions. Ban Shivu, Queen Marshal of the Howling Horde, Asmodee, the Lord of Eyes and Death and all sorts of horrible things, and the Grey Woodsman, the Axeman in the forest. Worshippers of those three gods felt that actually the three separate religions were worshipping aspects of one over god, and that if the three deities and the worshipping of the three deities could be brought together, this over god would be summoned that they would then worship. Well, it was all a fiction. There is no over god.
And the over god wasn't Kyuss. That was my misconception. Right.
It looks like they were created as a cover organization in order to spread the kinds of activities that would help Kyuss without realizing that they were supporting Kyuss.
Right.
Whoever concocted their foundational texts, again, this is all stuff that you've been told, but again,
very
it's all
KGB.
just gets buried in the noise. The foundation of their worship was that when the Age of Worms came, that would be when the three-part god would be made one.
That was one of the unfulfilled prophecies. Someone was trying to...
I thought we were going to come back to that. Yeah, we'll get back to that in 2 seconds.
And then the Yugoslaster with Rachnian was the other unfulfilled prophecy about
very
giving
possibly
a city to the undead.
Okay, I knew that the structure was all going to unravel. Johnny, that's extremely important. You've got two prophecies. A tripartite spirit once again becomes one, and at its advice are the mighty undone. You have thought, or you have imagined, that since there was this cult of people who were trying to bring three deities together into a single overgod, surely that is the prophecy. Surely that's what that prophecy refers to. That's the first part. Second thing is, on the eve of the Age of Worms, a hero of dread shall gift a city to the dead. That just must be Rachnian, trying to hand over Evenstar to the Yugoslaster and mass zombie conversion, right?
Yeah.
It seems like they must be right, but...
both of them have not come true.
Right. You don't know that that's not what they are, but you do know that you have been shown categorically, as you destroyed the ziggurat, the Spire of Long Shadows, out in the lands that wait, you have been shown a vision of all the prophecies that have come to pass. And those two were not in that vision. So, again, you're not learning anything you don't already know. But what I'm trying to say is that you don't know if you've been misled. It could be that you don't get shown those two for some weird reason. I don't know what that might be, but it could be. It could be that there were prophecies that have been foiled, that you foiled Prophecy 7. The reason that it's not been shown to you as a completed event in your vision is because you foiled it. So you were right. Likewise, it could be that you've destroyed the Ebon Triad effectively. You destroyed the aspect of the Ebon Triad in the crypt underneath the Plague House in Frosthanger. So could it be...
I still get the feeling that we are actually triggering the correct prophecies and that those were maybe false prophecies.
That's very, very possible.
We're supposed to be triggering the real ones because we are going to be bringing out the Age of Worms if we're not careful.
Very,
Someone's
very
guiding
possible.
us. Maybe it's Marcus.
no answers in that, right?
baddies.
I'm categorical about this. I'm not giving you any answers. What I'm saying is I'm drawing to your attention the fact that you know of two prophecies that you've not been shown were fulfilled. Yeah. They both seem to link to things that you've already experienced, but it's just not that cut and dried. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
So the Ebon Triad, let's go back to them. They're done. You've destroyed the aspect of the Ebon Triad. You've destroyed the great creature. It was an awful combat.
Yeah.
You lost Alessandra as part of that. You found a ledger concealed underneath the plague house, which seemed to show all of the members, the known members of the Ebon Triad, with their names all crossed out one by one. Ilthane, Loris Rachnian, all of these people. Yes? Mm-hmm. Your sense is that something was going on there. You don't know quite who was behind the Ebon Triad. All you can speculate is that worshippers of Kyuss formed the Ebon Triad, and you and they, not in concert with each other, have brought about the end of the Ebon Triad. Yeah. The reason I say that is because I think you can start forgetting about the Ebon Triad.
Right.
It's a very confusing story artifact that's brought in the early books, and then a line is drawn under it in book 8. We can forget them. So we've got the cultists of Kyuss. Who else have we got out there? Which are the other factions that are mixing up the picture?
Good or bad factions?
Either way.
So we think that Marcus and Eligos, and I'm not entirely sure how Hesty relates to that, but we think that they are a faction who are trying to find out what is going on.
That's perfectly fair.
So far they've been benign, but as Johnny says, may well be that we are all unwilling or unwitting carriers of the prophecies. That's a classic story, isn't it?
Fair.
We're doing what we're being told by people.
We discover right at the end of the last book that in actual fact this whole process has been down to us, and then we have to have the hero's journey of fixing it at the last minute.
I can give you no comfort on that score. You don't know who you can trust.
No, that's just
most D&D adventures, certainly most old school D&D adventures, involve people telling characters what to do, basically, one way or another.
Side missions.
You've run through a series of mentors, talking heads that have given you information about the story, often, I think, confusing the picture more than simplifying the picture.
Yeah.
And sending you on the next stage of what deliberately is an episodic adventure with building up in whatever. So you leave bits of it behind and you move on into other sections. We've got the cultists of Kyuss. Then you seem to have effectively the sort of forces of, to the extent that you can trust them at all, the forces of good. It seems to be a much looser alliance of people. Marcus, Hesty, they don't hang out together. Eligos seems to be more associated with Marcus than whatever. Hesty was there's some relationship with Eligos there, and he passed you on to her. Lashonna is your latest one.
Yeah.
Who can you trust? Who can you not trust? You don't know. Again, it seems complicated, but of course, what it is you're moving on from one phase to another, and I worry sometimes whether or not this plethora of mentor characters makes all of that bit seem more complicated, bewildering than it really is. Right?
Yeah,
the adventure is taking you through. We do end up
sort of getting a side challenge from this person, and then meeting that person, and then getting a side challenge from them.
Yes.
Yeah, we're just assuming they're the good guys, but we don't really know that, do we?
No, you don't really know
that. As Paul said, we've just been told what to do, and we'd rather stupidly just gone and done it.
I don't know whether it's stupidly, but
it's for the good.
Yeah, precisely. It's almost like you're being passed as a baton between these characters who ask you to carry out a certain task or find out a certain thing or contact a certain person, and then that moves you on to the next one, and then they move you on to the next one. Are they all on the same side? I can't help you with any of that.
No, I mean, the only thing that we can sort of trust is that the things we've done up to now, we've been going and basically, getting rid of a huge wormy thing. And, now we're off to basically find a lich. I mean, it's not like we've been sort of killing good people.
On the surface, at least.
We've saved the wood folk from a nasty dragon.
It's patronising.
Sorry, what were they called? The lizard folk.
Yeah. I thought the
wood folk this was years ago now. Right.
It was years ago.
So
why don't we talk about 21?
We've done one question out of how many?
This evening?
Yeah.
We're 3/4 of the way through my list.
Oh, excellent.
Let us talk about Kyuss briefly. What do you know about Kyuss? What can you tell me?
The only thing I know about Kyuss was when we had the vision of him being hailed at the ziggurat.
Well, that's a very good place to start. Anybody else remember anything about Kyuss?
There's a history. there's a history with the Windukes, or am I getting this completely wrong again?
That is completely wrong.
Brilliant.
I'm deliberately keeping the Windukes out of this.
Okay, good.
Should we briefly just touch upon the Windukes? Just because it's a really quick thing to get into, and we can put it to one side, and then we're more than 3/4 of the way through the list, Paul. The Windukes are pre-history. First of all, massive caveat.
Zosial.
Does not mean they don't relate to the present story. Kyuss, your efforts to prevent the Age of Worms, whatever it might be. But what I would say is think about the timescales. The Windukes, the Dawn War, the battle on the field of Pesh against the Queen of Chaos and Miska the Wolf Spider, the fragmentation of the Rod of Law into the Rod of Seven Parts, the tombs that you've explored at the beginning and returned to, and all of the grave goods that you've robbed from those tombs and all of that. It's the Silmarillion. It's more than 14, 15, 20,000 years ago. So yes, it's an interesting deep history backdrop to the story, and there may definitely be connections. We're talking about Chaos, the Queen of Chaos. We're talking about Kyuss. We're talking about law. Johnny is right that there are lots of themes running through the story of law versus chaos rather than straight good versus evil. Well, the Windukes were the lords of law. All that stuff is there, but they would never have heard of Kyuss. Kyuss was a man who lived 2,000 years ago and ascended to godhood.
Right. He was tutored by some alien creature, wasn't he?
He was, Johnny. You see, you do know. Yeah, you are getting this stuff.
Yes. Digging around it, you know.
Makar the Spellweaver, the interdimensional creatures. You saw a vision of Kyuss, who was a man ruling a city out in the lands that wait, shown a vision in turn of his potential future by these weird creatures, and was shown this worm.
Right. Okay.
Do you remember that?
So Paul was right about someone behind the scene behind Chaos. It's this.
Right, it might be somebody who just showed Kyuss
Thank you, Giles.
the way to
Johnny.
great things.
Yeah.
You've killed the creature that you saw in the vision. If that's some great secret god hiding behind everything, well, they're not anymore. It's more like a teacher or a tutor showing Kyuss.
Is he the guy we killed in the tombs beneath the ziggurat?
That's exactly who it was.
Right.
Makar,
yeah.
the undead spellweaver. So, yes, there may be a power behind Kyuss, but it certainly isn't that creature that showed Kyuss the secret eldritch lore around worms and undeadness. And
it might be an alien race, though.
So
an
do
alien
we
race
know?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Interfering with.
Yeah.
Do we know the history and how Kyuss actually ascended to godhood, and how he was thus afterwards, I presume, banished?
Yes.
We
Have you been told that story?
We saw something where he had it taken away from him, didn't he?
So 2,000 years ago, a man called Kyuss was given this vision by Makar.
Yes.
And then
this is all exactly right.
What happens after that? He followed this vision. He led an army. There was a huge battle. What happened after that?
The vision showed him lore and magic, things that he could exploit to ascend to godhood.
Yeah.
You were shown a series of visions where he was just the king of the city. Then the lines became blurred between king and deity. Then you were shown a vision of effectively a mass sacrifice of the people of the city and the power sucking towards him. You saw him trying to ascend to godhood, but then at the last minute being trapped, just as he was about to break free as a new deity into a black monolith.
Yeah.
And you saw that black monolith being carried
away
by a giant red dragon.
That's right.
From the top of the spire of Long Shadows.
The lawful evil, aren't they, red dragons?
Chaotic evil. That's what you know. And you also know, I think because Lashonna has told you this in just this last episode that we're going to refer back to, that red dragon is Kyuss's chief lord, marshal, lieutenant, whatever, and is now a Draco Lich. And you, and Lashonna has told you that you need to go and find the phylactery of that. Right, it's the same dragon.
Yes.
So again, this is stuff you already know and you've already been told.
The Draco Lich knows where Kyuss in the black crystal
monolith is. Wherever it took that monolith.
And I know where it is. It's on Katzenjammer, and I reckon Katzenjammer is populated by an alien race. And that alien race is the guy that was in the ziggurat, whatever his name was.
Yes.
And I have to. They live on the planet. This mythical.
Well, I have to quote Graham here, of course, because Graham suggested that Katzenjammer might not necessarily be a planet, but a comet.
Marcus has
Because
said that
the
it's a
comet will
green gas
return.
giant.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Did he?
But Marcus may not be right.
Yes.
We'll get to Katzenjammer.
Sounded very comet-like.
It's at the very bottom of my list.
Okay. Right. So,
Yeah.
did I get this right? As Kyuss was ascending to godhood,
Yes.
right at that moment,
Yes.
the red dragon comes in and basically swoops him off.
Close enough. At the very moment of his ascension to godhood,
Why did the red dragon betray him?
that you definitely have got the wrong idea there.
Yeah,
And it's not
right.
surprising because all of this stuff is done in visions that I just
Yeah.
read out from box text.
Yeah.
And there's no surrounding narrative, there's no clarification. But the vision
Yeah.
you saw was Kyuss at the moment of ascension to godhood,
Yeah.
something going catastrophically wrong.
Ah,
And rather
right.
than ascending to become a god, he was trapped within the black monolith that he'd built as a focus for the spell to make him a god.
Right.
It seems he got trapped inside it. And then later, you saw a vision
Oh,
of a
okay.
great
So
red
his
dragon
basically
coming.
his lieutenant basically took him off to safety,
Or
sort of thing.
the
or
person that
something
took him
like
off to
that.
safety was subsequently made his lieutenant.
Right.
And you also know from Lashonna, or you can piece together, that red dragon is now a Dracolich.
Yes, and we're going
And so,
after
what was this catastrophic event? Do we know that?
No, I mean, it's D&D.
Right. Okay. So we don't know what actually happened
went
as
wrong.
he was. Right. Okay. We don't know
No,
what
you
went.
don't know what went wrong with his special Ascension to Godhood
right.
spell.
Okay,
but
I
whatever
still
it was,
understand, yeah.
whatever had been shown by Makar and the multi-six-armed interdimensional Greeblies, it wasn't
Yeah.
that good, was it? Living on a weird planet or not,
No.
it wasn't perfect.
And we're after the phylactery so we can break the phylactery.
Yes, so just tying that little bit off, 1,500 years ago,
Mhm.
as has been outlined to you, Kyuss must have escaped from that prison and attempted to bring about the Age of Worms and was defeated by an order of druids called the Order of the Storm.
Aha. Okay.
This was what you were told by Lashonna. This is why you are going to go to this island.
Right.
In that island, they left the repository of all their knowledge, including where they had concealed the phylactery of the Dracolich,
Yeah,
Yeah.
Dragotha.
that's what we're trying to
That
find
is
out.
why you must go there, because if you can
Right.
destroy Dragotha, you are destroying Kyuss's greatest martial asset, lieutenant and leader. Again, it's Paizo. You work your way up the chain.
Yeah.
That ties that off, I think, quite nicely. We're talking about an age of darkness, an age of writhing darkness under the rule of Kyuss. Kyuss was trapped in a monolith, escaped briefly 1,500 years ago, was clearly banished back into it, or something happened by these druids. His chief lieutenant is a Dracolich called Dragotha. You're not quite sure of their location, but what you do know is that you can go and try and find the location of the phylactery and thereby nullify Dragotha as a force. Kyuss was given the lore, the knowledge that he then took to try and turn himself into a god by these alien creatures. You're not quite sure whether or not they're still on the scene, but hey, I think that's really settled that down. Do we feel that settled it down a bit?
I think that's excellent. And we've kind of got the idea that maybe in about 3 levels' time, we'll be kind of hitting the big gun.
Well, you're in book 9 of 12.
Yes.
I
so-
think you can work that. I mean, it's kind of right. There's 2 things left on my list.
Go on.
3 things left on my list. Let's talk about Zeech.
Ooh.
What do you think about Zeech?
Well, I thought he was this amazingly powerful person in control of this city, whose name of Frostdranger. And
Yep, close enough. Yeah.
Frostdanger.
Yeah.
That's not as bad as Ooh Sibbly Wibbly Poo. I still can't
No.
remember.
Yeah.
Spabadoo Who Pagly or something, wasn't it?
There's Kiosk, Smoogie Boo, Spook Stiggly, and Frostdranger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Evil Star.
Evil
Yeah.
Star.
Yeah.
Hasty testy bollocks. But then when we met him, he seemed quite a pathetic character. He seemed a bit simpering, a bit.
Yeah.
And my mission,
Certainly vain, definitely very
Yeah.
vain, yeah.
and my initial thinking is he's either a puppet or he's some kind of weird clone of the real one, or he's being controlled very closely by somebody else, or he's frightened of something. He didn't seem to be standing on his own, powerful, scary. That was my impression. But we didn't get any deeper than that.
You did learn from
we're
Lashonna.
forgetting another faction,
we
aren't
found
we?
also, but we found that Lashonna, being a silver dragon herself, I think he didn't quite know about her.
There's certainly nothing to suggest that he knows about her true nature. Not
Yeah.
that you know of, anyway.
So he was kind of in awe of her, massively besotted with her, but didn't realise maybe she was part of this control over him. That's
very possibly.
my thinking.
That's something that's an idea that's certainly surfaced in the conversations you've had with other people. And Lashana?
There was also a bit of a disconnect, because at the party there was all this kind of reference to how he had been pretty ruthless with anybody who'd gone against him in the past. But that I didn't feel came out in his character.
It was all very parochial, though, wasn't it? It all seemed to me to be like,
it's all very local.
Okay, he's a minor lord in this sort of Frostanger area, and he's obviously quite big in that area, but it doesn't seem to extend
and
beyond
all the
that.
Lots of the foreign dignitaries ambassadors just didn't bother to turn up.
That's right. So what's going on with Zeech? Yeah, just thought I'd
That whole thing felt to me like a sort of vehicle, a springboard to us actually ending up meeting Lashana, and Lashana sort of like, well, I trust you guys in some ways to give you this information.
That's certainly one way of looking at it.
Felt a bit like that to me.
Just to close off the Zeech question, Burple asked Lashana, what's going on here? Zeech doesn't look like rulership material. And what Lashana said was, well, maybe he has all of the characteristics that one would need to acquire power, and none of the characteristics one would need to exercise it.
Useful idiot.
What she said. He could be very ambitious. She said he has a reputation as once of being a great warrior, that he was ruthless in his pursuit of power. It's just that maybe he's not the person you would trust with power.
Yes.
Maybe he's a genuinely rare thing in a D&D adventure, a complex character, not somebody from central casting, right? Just because you hear something about or you understand something about somebody doesn't mean that when you meet them in person that they match the sort of D&D profile that you would expect them to match, is what I would say. That doesn't mean that you can not trust him or fear him or not fear him, but I think he's about almost the most interesting NPC that we've encountered so far, because the actual fact of his existence, what he does, is all confused and compromised, and his personality doesn't seem to match his reputation or his deeds. And what's going on with Zeech?
You often get that. Able to win the war, but not win the peace.
Yes. That's enough of Zeech. I've got one more. Our last question. Cuthbert.
Oh, here we go.
There's a different faction, isn't it?
I've got to be careful where I step here, because I don't run Cuthbert. Paul runs Cuthbert. One thing I think we should clear up is that the actions of Cuthbert are not just me with my hand up inside the Cuthbert puppet. What I'm trying to say here is that I think that there is nothing to say that Cuthbert is not deeply involved in the greater story. The prophecy, the age of worms, the powers of chaos, the powers of law. He could well be involved in all of those things, but you've not seen any evidence so far that he is. And also, I don't get to decide what he does. Certainly not solely, anyway. So I just thought I would.
But he's slightly demonic, isn't he? You know, the different coloured eyes, and that links with some sort of devil thing.
Right.
So
I'm allowed to be.
If they're powerful enough to be devils, then there's probably another faction there.
I can speak much more freely about Cuthbert because he's not my thing. What I wrote down, what I thought about Cuthbert, I put the Outsplinters surely have something demonic in their heritage. That was the first note I made. I think we've all picked up on that. The other thing about Cuthbert is he does feature in one of the prophecies. You're pretty certain he does. An orphan will gift a whatever it is thingy, and that you've seen that prophecy fulfilled. Doesn't mean, however, that there's any connection between the fact that he features in a prophecy and the actual age of worms that the fulfillment of the prophecies are meant to be about. I think we've got into that question more than once. He professes that he has no connection to Kyuss, and there is nothing that you have found to link him to any of that, apart from the fact that he appears in a prophecy. And then the last thing I put is, he's up to something, though. I don't really know what it is.
I feel like Cuthbert is like a bit of a Malfoy.
Right. I mean, that's not miles off. Yeah, I quite like that. I think that's, Malfoy. Yeah. Lucius Malfoy. No, not Lucius Malfoy. Is it Lucius the kid, or who's the kid?
The kid, and he's called Malfoy. I can't remember what his...
It's Lucius, and there's the father.
Dad.
Lucius is he called Draco Malfoy?
Draco Malfoy, yeah. I feel it's somehow because he is ultimately interlinked with the whole thing at the end. You know, his absolution at the end of the story is part of the whole.
I don't know
story of Harry Potter.
We'll see where the story takes us.
I mean, I'm not saying that that's going to pan out like that, but just my feeling is we seem to have this sort of intricate relationship with Cuthbert. In that, you know, we've been fellow travellers, but he's obviously, you know, grandson of a mafia boss. Like you said, draconic histories. He's not quite sort of like what you call
not
common born as
yeah.
us, but he seems to be mixed up with us in the story as it goes forward.
I think there's quite a lot of Zeech about Cuthbert as well. In the sense that he seems to be a bit of a kind of an ingenue kid, but his actions are ruthless.
Yes.
Anyway, there we are. That's Cuthbert. I don't know what else I can tell you about Cuthbert. When you mentioned factions right at the beginning, I thought this is interesting. We've got an loose association of good people. We've got the cultists of Kyuss. The Ebon Triad, who I think we can now park to one side. We've got Cuthbert.
Cuthbert's quite like Zeech. He is quite.
I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of these characters, and I don't speculate which ones, but a lot of these people who we're meeting along the way, who we haven't actually sort of like boss fight fought, are all going to sort of somehow appear again in the final fight. I sort of have this feeling that those people are sort of...
Shank Thankum, haven't you?
I haven't read any of the...
we've got Shank Thankum again.
Mysterious character.
We're running out of time. I'm going to have to wind things up a little bit. Let's very briefly touch on...
Rabadabadas?
Let's not get into Rabadabadas. Rabadabadas is another one of these people in that loose association with Marcus and Eligos and Hesti and whatever.
Okay, fair enough.
You just haven't met him.
Yeah.
The last time anybody ever saw him alive was 16 years ago. And he was heading off somewhere called the Rift in the north, in the northern wilderness. I mean, maybe one day you'll go to the Rift in the northern wilderness and you'll find out what happened to him there, or just not as likely you won't, because every time you go anywhere he goes, he doesn't seem to be there. So, and I haven't read that far ahead. Katzenjammer.
Yes.
Right. The only reason I'm talking about this is it's literally the last thing on my list.
Right.
So I thought I'd make sure that I've just checked in that we've talked about it. But what you know about Katzenjammer, you know from Marcus and from your experience of your own interactions with people who seem to be looking for it. The people you've seen looking for it are cultists of Kyuss. Dead simple.
Yeah.
Your understanding of what Katzenjammer is that it is a mythical 10th planet in the Tonj system, and that it has some kind of significance. Its appearance in the sky, perhaps? Is it a secret redoubt or base for evil forces? Is it a comet that will streak across the sky that, if you can prevent it doing so, will prevent the Age of Worms? I know that's what you'd like to be the case, Lucas. Something nice and like, that's what's happening. They're trying to do this thing, and if we can stop them doing this thing, we win. I haven't read the last book, so I don't know.
Although if it's a comet, that would be difficult to stop, right?
Maybe you need a team of people who are really skilled at getting into underground, that get trained to travel up to the comet, land on it, and explore its interior with the aim of setting off some kind of device to blow it apart and prevent it from crashing into Hearth. That could be the case, couldn't it?
You could start...
That sounds like a plot of a movie, actually.
Yes, could start Liv Tyler.
The plot of a movie that I constantly reference. Yes.
Or it could be
the finest movie ever made.
It could be that these green stuff is that what they're actually intending to do is to seed the tail of the comet with worms, and then when Hearth moves through the tail of the comet,
good lord,
the meteor shower will basically rain down worms on the Earth, and maybe our job is to stop that happening.
Lucas spends way too much time by himself.
Quite some imagination.
What I would say...
I reckon the phylactery's on the planet.
Could be possible, yeah.
And it's got a load of alien greeblies.
That's great. I think we've covered Katzenjammer.
Thank you.
Yeah, the only two things that I was going to say about Katzenjammer is I still think that we need to go and see Isenfen, because you were asking about who knows about this, and you've mentioned that the people who know about it are all the cultists. And we have the orrery, and so it seems to me like it would be sensible that we actually go and find out some more about this from people who are maybe more benign rather than evil.
I think Parker is homesick.
Yeah, well, he certainly is, yes.
Okay,
that too.
There's a point on Isenfen, by the way, something that we didn't pick up with the Cuthbert thing. Cuthbert may not be related to the story directly, but the reason you're in this adventure is because when Parker stole a forbidden glance into the sensor, the great sensor that looks into the sky, which allows Isenfen, he saw
Cuthbert.
He saw a figure with one green and one grey eye, just like Matthew's new character in the Glass Cannon. I will stop going on about it at some point.
Yes.
Do you think they listen to the Billowing Hilltop?
I really seriously doubt it. He saw a figure with one green and one grey eye standing in the entrance to the cairn.
Yeah.
And he knew that within that cairn were treasures and secrets. And then he met Cuthbert in Diamond Lake when he was working on the Calamanthus run. Cuthbert was there to buy Calamanthus for the Outsplinters. So it all ties up very neatly. Chaps, I think that's enough. I think that's been very useful.
I found that incredibly useful, and I feel a lot
settled
more
a lot.
Sort of.
I would leave you with one thought.
I know where we are.
Like Jerry Springer, bear in mind that a lot of what you encounter in this story, I have added and is not from the book.
Yes.
So be careful in assigning too much significance to things. I'm not telling you what I've added and what is in the book. This is partially why I felt it was important to have this little chat, because
cats and yammer.
If things are overwhelmingly complicated and there seem to be too many elements zipping around your heads like ironstones and you can't work out where you are, I am partly to blame. It's not just your
No, it's good. It's good.
It's not just your inability to understand story that is the problem.
Right.
It is also the fact there is an awful lot of story, and some of that is me adding in bits to add colour and add little things to do or to cater for some of the things that you're interested in. Yeah. Right, that's it.
Marvellous.
That was great.
Thank you very much.
Excellent. Of course, you do realise, Mike, that at the beginning of the next episode, we're going to be like, tell me again about Kyuss?
Yeah, I'm going to
how is he related to Cuthbert?
In 10 minutes' time, I will have forgotten all of this.
Will you ruin the first 10 minutes of the next episode asking irritating plot questions? Well, we'll find out when we pick it up.
Probably not.
Next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Chaps.
Bye-bye.
The Billowing Hilltop podcast is a Billowing Hilltop production. Dungeons & Dragons is a trademark of Wizards of the Coast. The Library of Last Resort and Age of Worms are copyright Paizo. The Library of Last Resort was written by Nicholas Logue. Music is from Kevin MacLeod and Incompetech.com and is used with thanks under the Creative Commons license. Additional music and sound effects come from the wonderful Sirenscape. All other original material is copyright Billowing Hilltop. Role-playing games are all about getting people together, and we use Roll20 as our tabletop, the perfect place to host your game, and Discord to host our chat. Thanks for listening.
Hello everyone and welcome to 5 Gems in a Trench Coat.
Excuse me?
Yeah?
What's that?
You want to know what 5 Gems in a Trench Coat is? Let us tell you.
It's the adhesive that keeps the fragile pieces of my sanity together.
Well, okay, Jesse, what it actually is a narrative-driven TTRPG actual play where 5 friends take turns weaving stories through the tabletop game of their choice.
Of their choice?
Each season?
Each season.
That's pretty cool.
I disagree.
Oh.
I feel it's the adhesive.
So, like, you guys aren't all in a trench coat?
No, we're definitely in a trench coat.
How does that work?
Get her.
Before I'm caught, you can check out 5 Gems in a Trench Coat just about anywhere you get your podcasts, or you can check out our website at 5gemsinatrenchcoat.com. Oh my god, they really are all in a trench coat.